Recording in progress.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, January 17th, 2023 Tompkins County Legislature. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. If we could do a roll call of members, please.
Mike Sigler.
Here.
Travis Brooks.
Here.
Randy Brown. Amanda Champion.
Here.
Deborah Dawson.
Here.
Rich John. Dan Klein.
Here.
Ann Corman.
Here.
Mike Lane.
Here.
Greg Mezzi.
Here.
Veronica Pillar.
Here, virtually.
Lee Shirtliff.
Here.
Shauna Black.
Here.
Randy Brown. Rich John. 11 members present.
Thank you, Katrina. This evening, we will not have presentation, proclamations, petitions, or communications and notices. We will also not have an executive session. Let's open the floor up to the privilege of the floor for our public. If you are in the public and you would like to speak, please fill out a blue card. And I believe we have one person who is here via Zoom. That would be Paul Moore.
I'm not seeing Mr. Moore yet on Zoom.
Okay. I do not have any blue cards either. So why don't we move along? If we end up getting someone in the audience that would like to speak and fill out a blue card, we can always go back. Municipal officials, I see George McGonigal from the city of Ithaca. Hello, George.
Hi, Shauna. Do you have a note, Randy? All right. So, good evening. I'm here because I wanted to introduce you to Jorge DiFendini, who is taking over for Patrick Mailer to share this job with me. He's running a little late, so I'll tell a few jokes until he gets here.
Does he have a note?
I don't know. We'll find out. One thing I did want to talk to you about, I want to congratulate Mike on the birth of his daughter. That's pretty cool, huh? Sir. Doesn't look very smokable. But congratulations.
Thank you very much, George.
Sort of in keeping with the conversation we had 2 weeks ago, the city is about to clean up what's left of the encampments between the new Brindley Street Bridge and that's going to start tomorrow. We're fortunate that we don't have a lot of snow this year, and our very undermanned crews have time to do this now. That's why we're doing it now. And we're going to ask, it's all been arranged so that the transportation...
George, I hate to interrupt you, but would you like to try that microphone over there? It might be more consistent. Thank you. Sorry about that.
And George, it may have been because your hand was on the mic, just FYI.
Oh, yeah, it could be, yeah. So the city's going to separate tires and metal, and we're going to take care of that ourselves, and we're going to bring everything else to the county transfer station, and we're going to ask that the county help us pay for that. We're going to pay for it up front, but we're going to ask for your help. Any questions on that?
Deborah Dawson?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, George. I appreciate that the city's about to do something about this, and I don't think we would mind assisting with paying for it, although I'm only one person out of 14. But my concern is you're going to take out the tires and the metal. What about the hazardous waste and syringes and drug-related paraphernalia, which I don't think you're allowed to just dump on our materials management people?
You know what, let's actually, because I know a lot of things have been happening behind the scenes, George, and I believe Leo and Barb Ekstrom have been working with your public works people. Is it all right if we let Barb Ekstrom pipe in here?
Sure.
Would that be all right? Hi, Barb.
Well, let me just say this. We have a DEC permit to operate. The DEC permit regulates what can and can't come in. And what I would just like to be clear about is that there are many things we don't accept. And what I have sent, this came upon us rather quickly, but what I have sent is an email that asked for a written plan. I received a brief written plan this afternoon. We have approved it, but what it says is that the material that we don't accept, and we've provided that, and my deputy also met with the assistant superintendent on the location. I will remark that this is one of many locations for the encampment. This particular location is pretty far from the recycling center, and we have photos, we have an idea of what it consists of. This area is about, we think it's about, we're estimating about 10 tons. That's our staff. And that there is, another 15 to 20 acres of material. So it's my understanding, and I think that we need to be sure of this when the material comes up. This is just one area of many. But in the meantime, we don't accept many things. We don't accept fuel. We don't accept medical waste. We don't accept hazardous waste. We've made it clear what we don't accept. We cannot allow that material to be deposited on the tipping floor, or it becomes a responsibility and a liability to the county. Bill Troy and I have spoke a number of times. So what we have in writing, we've been assured that that separation will take place at the location and not when the material is delivered. The facility operator and my deputy will have staff on hand tomorrow, because we understand it's just tomorrow for this little piece, to assure that we're in compliance with the DEC permit. We're disappointed that the scrap metal will not come to us because there's revenue for that, but we understand that everyone can choose to do what they want. So I think that clarifies. Now, in terms to help the legislature, if there is the discussion of payment and sharing in payment, there's a resolution on the books that is clear, and there's a process in place that if there is a request, we don't have to get a request for a waiver of whatever fees, that would go to myself, and then it would go to the appropriate committee, and then it would be approved by the legislature. So that's the process that is on the books.
And is it the case, Barb, that it's the tipping fee is $96 a ton? Is that still?
Our tipping fee for anyone is $96 a ton. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Just so we know what kind of numbers we're talking about.
Well, this is a teeny tiny amount compared to the rest of the site, but, and, you know, I've shared pictures, but it is a very small amount that is my understanding that it will be coming in tomorrow. So we have approved just this amount from this location that has been documented on the map.
Thank you. Ann Corman.
Thank you for that clarification, and thank you for coming to speak with us, George. I'm just thinking, after this amount is brought in and the fees waived, you know, if the county needed to look at, you know, just think about down the road, did we need to look at some other, if we wanted to pay for that, would it come out of some other funds versus just being waived and your department, you know, having to cover that cost?
We don't have the funds for this. We don't have a waiver amount. We used to keep a waiver amount, but as you know, my budget is going to be $250,000 in the negative. So our office provides the service for delivery of material. We don't do the waivers. That has never been the case. With the Red Cross that we had, that was paid for through the county.
So there's not going to be a waiver?
Not from my department.
So we'd have to figure out how to...
Contingent fund or something, yeah.
To pay back what the fees would be to Casella, I guess. So, okay, something sounds like we're going to be looking into and talking about.
It would be through the scales. I mean, we did get direction today in writing where we need to send the bill. And as George said, they would pay the bill. This would have to go back regardless of who pays it in the county. It still requires committee and legislative approval for any waiver. It doesn't mean that we would be the ones waiving it. It means the county.
Okay, thank you, Barb.
Yep, you bet.
So I have asked Dan Klein if in Health and Human Services, if they would handle this resolution moving forward for it to go through the committee. You know, we can decide if we want to help out the city by paying for a portion of it or for paying for the whole thing. The one thing that I'm wondering, George, is I personally would not feel comfortable paying for a portion of this if there wasn't a plan in place for this to keep happening. Can you talk a little bit about how the city, if the city essentially has a plan for the trash not to accumulate?
I'll preface that, but this is Jorge DiFendini, my colleague from Common Council, and I'll speak more to introducing him in just a bit. But I appreciate the fact that this happened quickly. The reason it's happening quickly is because the weather allows us to do it. If we were in a normal winter with a lot of snow, our extremely understaffed DPW wouldn't have the manpower to do it. I've gotten a clear signal from this body that this is a problem. This trash is a problem. And we agree, and we don't want to do it again either. So is there a plan in place? Not in writing, no. But I can assure you that for this one area of the jungle, we're going to make every effort to keep it cleaned up, period. There are other encampments on city land and on railroad land that we're not going to address yet. We're still working to establish a sanctioned encampment at the south end of city property, and that work is ongoing. We're hoping to do something by spring. It's going to be a small start, but the idea is that there is going to be parts of city property where camping will no longer be acceptable, And there are going to be places on city property where it is in fact going to be not just acceptable, but more comfortable and safer. Because remember, we're also thinking about the people who are living outdoors, and we want their conditions to be better. So do we have anything written down yet? No. But this is dangerous work and unpleasant work for our crews, and we don't want to ask them to do it again.
Any other questions for George or Jorge? Welcome.
Yeah, I'd just like to introduce Jorge DiFendini. He will be doing the mid-month meetings, and I'll continue to do the first of the week meetings. Jorge is smarter than me, but I'm not as good looking as he is, so we make a good team. He's a smart young man, so. And he listens, and he's a good addition to Common Council, so I'll let him speak for himself.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's nice to meet you all. I apologize for my tardiness. I got my schedules mixed up, but going forward, I will be a lot more conscious of that, and I'm looking forward to working with you all, answering your questions, relaying information between our two bodies. I want us to have a really good relationship. I think a lot of us agree on that, and so I'm looking forward to playing a part in that as well. I want you all to think of me as your spare George in case we lose this one. They think they did that on purpose, but yeah, it's going to be a pleasure working with you all. I'm looking forward to a great year. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Ann Corman.
Thanks. Just welcome, Jorge. And I just wanted to say one more thing. Randy and I met with some the folks up at Second Wind, some of the people that live there, and some of the people that run it. And one of the things that was said by both of those groups was that we asked them about like who might come and live there, and they said that some people prefer to live outdoors. And I'm not saying everybody that's there, so I don't mean to generalize everybody, but they said there's a certain population that wants to live outdoors. So I'm intrigued by the idea of trying to make it safer for them, but still having them, some people still living outdoors, the ones that really prefer that. So interesting to be talking more about that issue with the city.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we've talked about is that this is a big issue, perhaps one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with in the city and the county right now. And I think it would be a mistake for any of us to treat this as a quick fix or a one-size-fits-all. We're going to need a big toolbox with a lot of different approaches to do it, and it's only going to get done if we're working together to do this. And so it seems like we got a lot of progress in that direction. I'm looking forward to doing that. I'm looking forward to taking multiple approaches to deal with this multifaceted issue.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you very much for coming, to both of you. We appreciate it. Okay, next on our agenda, we have legislator privilege of the floor. Greg Mezzi.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank Legislator Sigler for setting up some time with our newly elected Congressman, Mark Molinaro. There was a few of us there, and it was a pleasure meeting him. It's nice to have somebody in county government, or from county government, at that level of government, somebody who understands what we go through and can definitely, just has a lot of resource. So I thought the conversation was promising, and I really liked his approach to, there's a time for politics and there's a time for governing, right? And the time for politics is small and the time for governing is much bigger. So hopefully he'll become a great partner to the county. But I appreciate his time coming here today and meeting with a few of us. So thanks for setting that up, Mike.
No problem. Thanks.
Any other legislators? Mike Lane?
I got three small things. One, our MPO, our transportation agency, which is directed by Fernando de Aragon, The reason we have an MPO is because of our urbanized area. It gives us enough population to qualify for that. And that means we can direct more of the funding that comes to our area for local projects. The Census Bureau announced last year that it was going to change the way it calculated the population threshold for MPOs. And it was going to change from an analysis based on population density, which is actual people, to a housing density model. And that had a lot of us concerned as to what it might affect us here. The population, fortunately, by the change of model, has increased from the previous, after the 2010 census of 53,551 people, you got to have over 50,000, to now 59,102 as of the 2020 census. And we have now, they've just published the list of urbanized areas based on the 2020 census, so we're okay. We were worried about that for the next 10 years, and then we'll see what happens. So Mike Sigler is helping us with our population, and we're really pleased about that.
There you go. Was that one person over that got us the fund?
Well, everyone counts. I was pleased to attend the Downtown Ithaca Agency's annual event dinner last week, their annual meeting. They haven't held one because of the pandemic. They were really the last annual meeting that actually held a formal gathering back in 2020. But they're back at it. That was nicely done. And for any of you that haven't attended one of those meetings, you ought to. You learn a lot about what's been going on in downtown Ithaca, particularly with development at those meetings. And why I mention it is they handed out a State of Downtown Report 2021 to 2022, and it's chock full of very interesting demographic information about what's going on in downtown Ithaca. And I've put a copy of it over on top of the mailboxes for people to look at. It's really worth, it's not a hard read. There's a lot of tables and things, but it's great information. So glad to see the downtown Ithaca doing well. And the last thing I'll mention was in my box this afternoon, I had a magazine put in there from Frank Proto, who is apparently a Mason. And this is from the last fall Masons magazine. And there's an article in here all about Daniel Tompkins, for whom our county is named, whom this building is named, and how his birthday is celebrated every year in June down in New York, where he's actually entombed down there. And I'm going to have copies of it made for everybody. It's kind of interesting historical information. Maybe we ought to put on our calendars his birthday and acknowledge it every year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else for legislative privilege of the floor? It's a very quiet group today. Okay. Next, I'll move on to the chair's report. Oh, I'm sorry. We have
a member of the public is here now if you wanted to.
Okay. And that is Paul Moore.
Yes.
Dominic. Hello, Paul. You are welcome to speak on privilege of the floor, and we will give you 3 minutes for comment.
Okay. My name is Paul Moore. I was born in Ithaca, and I came back here a few years ago after retiring. I recently read the Tompkins County Energy Strategy of August of 2019, and I very much agree with one of the comments in it. Quote, there's a need and a desire among many for big and bold action. The only word I would have added is now. And as I listened just to the first 5 minutes of this meeting, I can see that there are a lot of good people working to do a lot of good things with a lot of challenges. But I just want to offer that if we could bring it up one floor for a minute. 10 months ago, the IPCC, which is the International Panel on Climate Change, stated that we have 3 years to make major course corrections in our energy habits. In December, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, "Our world is headed for climate catastrophe without urgent action." And 2 weeks ago, the director of the IMF, International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, stated, "If we do not reduce our carbon emissions substantially within the next 3 years, the 3 degrees Celsius average global temperature will arrive, and the results will be catastrophic and not reversible." So bottom line is there's really 26 months to do some major carbon reductions. Not a 2030 plan, not a 2050 plan, 2024 plan. So that's why I'm nervous as a citizen. Recently, the director of sustainability in Ithaca left, and I got a chance to work with him for about a year as a volunteer when I was on a committee to make up the greenhouse deal package of measurements, if you will. He understood the words whole system design and circular economy and a couple of other ones that come from my service in the military. In extremis, when you're on a Navy ship and you know that there's a major problem that you're in, you have permission to go outside of the rules to save people's lives. And all hands on deck, when that happens, everybody is focused on one thing, which is safety and survival. So he was a very good mentor for me and a nice colleague. But anyways, there is a phrase that's been around for a while, pay me now or pay me later. And the pay me is the planet. And the situation has changed a heck of a lot. And the new phrase is really pay me now because there is no later, meaning 2.5 years. So things have to change quickly is my request. And that means business, education, NGOs, government, and all citizens have to be going in the same direction, which I understand is a real challenge. But my experience suggests that it comes from the top down rather than well-intentioned people from the bottom up. So I hope our values can get clarified so that we have a new convergent thinking. And I'm sorry these are also such lofty words, but I can't think of what else to say except I'm scared for the planet and where we're going. And there doesn't feel like there's much time from my perspective. So whatever you can do as a county legislature to make things happen will be wonderful. And I think Barb is in charge of the Tompkins County Waste, isn't she? Yeah, I will make contact with her because that's been where my biggest concern has been, is how much waste we're producing. So thank you, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for joining us. Okay, now I am going to move on with the chair's report and some appointments and announcements for our committees this evening. I would like to congratulate Mike and Sarah on the birth of their beautiful daughter. Congratulations. I also wanted to start off by noting our appreciation for Congressman Mark Molinaro, who stopped by our airport and our chambers today to discuss important issues, and also let him know that we appreciate his feedback and interest in our community. Now on to the state of the county. I am honored to report that the state of Tompkins County is strong. This fact is exemplified by the upcoming county administrator's report on departmental achievements that you will all hear in a few minutes. We're addressing our community's most pressing challenges: mental health, homelessness, food insecurity, climate change, and housing, while maintaining efforts critical to our essential service delivery. We also continue to make strides even while recruiting new employees, which has become even more challenging than ever. Whereas last year we saw a record state budget with a prolific economy recovering from COVID-19, I recognize that going into the 2023 budget, we have concerns about the global economy and where things will shake out with inflation's rising prices that are impacting households in our organization. These are critical discussions that must inform our decision-making. I know this legislature is at its best when we balance our concerns, tempered expectations, and new ideas as we plan our budget. Historically, we have been very careful stewards of public funds, and my hope is we will continue to have a robust organization and healthy fund balance that can help us weather another storm if needed. Relax, Deborah Dawson. We will soon receive the initial results of our much-anticipated compensation study. This will give us benchmarks to ensure that we're on the right track, offering wages that are fair and attractive to employees and recruits. Tompkins County is a great place to work, and we will have many considerations to make in the coming year related to how we compensate our colleagues. I continue to contribute the success of our county on the many people that work here. We strive to be an employer of choice and want our employees to feel valued. This year, we'll also see continued discussion on the physical infrastructure that makes our county successful. 2022 saw discussions around capital projects and building improvements. I expect the same will continue in 2023. I want to also highlight the decisions made by this legislature to kick off work on the Green Facilities Plan in 2022 that is setting us up for long-term sustainable future for all of our buildings and operations. We have been a leader in New York State and will continue to do so in the upcoming year. These are not only investments in our organization, but also for our community. We expect safe and effective spaces to deliver services and the best and most driven employees to deliver such services. This year, we'll see the first strategic operations plan developed, which is set to give us further direction on how to best meet our obligations and find new ways to serve the public and operate as an effective organization. The core of what we do in Tompkins County is delivering services to the public, whether that be keeping over 300 miles of roads clear and in working order, or ensuring WIC or SNAP benefits are delivered to those in need. I believe the state of these services is strong, and 2022 showed a high level of output and resilience by our organization. When it comes to the services that we offer to the public, no one should feel left out or disregarded by Tompkins County. In the coming year, we must strive even further to ensure consistency and equity across the entirety of our county. In 2022, public and mental health completed their merger, with services now integrated into one whole health model. Our staff found new ways to better meet the needs of the public and adapt with best practices. This is an example of what we should be striving for across the organization. A monumental achievement in 2022 was the legislature's final agreement on $6.5 million in grant funds through the Community Recovery Fund. The applications to this fund showed us gaps and opportunities across the county. It's also clear that so many people and organizations are still trying to recover from the impacts of the pandemic. I believe the $6.5 million in investments will truly be transformative. But we've also heard loud and clear that certain areas continue to need funding, and our constituents are quick to remind us that they feel the county should be doing more. We will continue to seek out other ways to meet these needs and find opportunities for organizations in our community. In 2022, we made investments in the areas of reimagining public safety, housing and homelessness, and addressing the EMS crisis in our county. It's time for us to move past conversations on these topics and into action. Bringing on and empowering staff to coordinate in these issue areas will be critical for us. I look forward to gaining expertise and making progress this year. These issues require us to think critically about equity and service delivery and how we can make lasting change, as these are not new issues, just newly explored in depth by this legislature. We have a responsibility to choose approaches and make investments that are sustainable for the long term. In closing, as we look back at 2022 and move forward into 2023, it is clear that effective partnerships and a shared vision for success are more important than ever. Whether it be supporting our transportation services, improving housing outcomes, improving economic development, or addressing the opioid crisis, we and our partners share the responsibility for this work. In Tompkins County, we are successful because we hold values that reflect our community. 2022 was the first year with our newly minted Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Statement, which proudly hangs in all county buildings, including the legislature chambers. I believe it is a commitment that gives us strength in what we do, and I look forward to another year of living by our values. We have many challenges before us. We are in a unique time to build upon our strengths and what we've learned over the past few years. This group of 13, soon to be 14 legislators will be tasked with many big decisions in the upcoming year. It seems more people than ever are looking at us to address our community's challenges. The question that will define next year's state of the county is how we rise to that challenge. Thank you. Now let's move on to the fun part. Let's talk about committees. Okay, starting us off for the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee, and these will be effective February 1st, 2023. Deborah Dawson, Chair. Lee Shurtleff, Vice Chair. Rich John, Mike Lane, and Amanda Champion, members. Facilities and Infrastructure, Mike Lane, Chair. Randy Brown, Vice Chair. Lee Shurtleff, Deborah Dawson, and Greg Mezzi, members. Government Operations Committee, Amanda Champion, Chair. The new District 3 representative will be Vice Chair. Dan Klein, Mike Lane, and Rich John, members. Health and Human Services Committee, Dan Klein, Chair. Travis Brooks, Vice Chair. Randy Brown, member. Amanda Champion, and District 3 Rep, members. Housing and Economic Development, Greg Mezzi, Chair. Travis Brooks, Vice Chair. Ann Corman, Mike Sigler, and Veronica Pillar, members. And just a side note, what we ended up doing this year, I also want to thank Dan Klein because it took hours and hours for us to sit down and go through this rubric of legislators and requests, and it essentially is like a big puzzle that you try and accept all of the requests and get everyone into where they want to be, taking note of their preferences. And Dan Klein and I spent a lot of time together, which was, of course, a lot of fun. I think what came out of our discussions with the many legislators was that our real focus this year should be on housing and economic development. And so the idea that we came up with that would best suit this group of legislators was for us to break apart. Traditionally, we had the PDEC committee, and we are going to break that up to the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee. This might sound familiar to some of you. We had this a few years ago. And then we are moving housing and economic development into a separate committee. So we're actually going to bring the housing aspect out of Health and Human Services into its own committee. So let's see where I was. Okay, so next committee is Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality. Ann Corman, Chair. Veronica Pillar, Vice Chair. Members, Greg Mezzi, Randy Brown, and the District 3 representative. Public Safety Committee, Rich John, Chair. Lee Shurtleff, Vice Chair. Veronica Pillar, member. Mike Sigler, member, and Ann Corman, member. Workforce, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. This is going to be a bi-monthly meeting with Veronica Pillar as Chair and Ann Corman as a member. The Community Recovery Fund. I see so many smiles on everyone's face right now. So we're going to have to bring this committee back for another year, essentially to check in on the grants that we've provided. And there might also be an opportunity, if grants are not claimed, for funds to go back into this committee and decisions to be made. The thought behind this committee was that we wanted anyone who wanted to be part of this committee to be on it, so it's going to be rather large. Dan Klein, Chair. Thank you, Dan Klein, for taking on this. I know it was a beast last year, but you did a wonderful job. Deborah Dawson, Vice Chair. Veronica Pillar, Travis Brooks, Randy Brown, Mike Sigler, and the District 3 representative. Next, I will move on to the chair's appointment. Ithaca Area Development Board of Directors, Shauna Black and Greg Mezzi. Ithaca Area Economic Development Executive Committee, Lisa Holmes. Chamber of Commerce, Shauna Black and Greg Mezzi, alternate. Extension Services, or CCE, Randy Brown and the District 3 representative. Ethics Advisory Board, Rich John, Chair. Ithaca Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Committee, Mike Lane and Randy Brown will be the alternate. Tompkins Center for History and Culture Governance Committee, Rich John, who is a non-voting representative. Municipal Electric and Gas Alliance, Terry Carroll. Cayuga Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization, Darby Kiley and Ann Corman will be the alternate. Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Veronica Pillar, Chair. And then our special negotiating committees, the Corrections Union, Shauna Black and Lee Shurtleff. Road Patrol, Civil Division, Shauna Black and Rich John. CSEA, Blue Collar, Shauna Black and Ann Corman. CSEA, White Collar, Shauna Black and Randy Brown. Tompkins Cortland Community College, Faculty, Mike Lane. PAA, Rich John. Adjunct, District 3, Representative. CSEA, Ann Corman. And then we also will have a Cornell group and an Ithaca College group that will be determined over the next few weeks. I would ask that committee chairs, either if we end up having a break tonight or after the meeting, if you could gather with your members. And there has been one of the meeting schedules that I believe is in your red folders. If you could gather and work on a date that works for all of your members on your committees. And let our clerks know, please. Okay. Next, we are going to move on to special topical presentations. And this evening, we have a presentation by Terry Carroll, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer, and he is going to provide an update on our Waterloo Hydro and our 2023 energy procurement.
All right, just give me a minute here to get my presentation up. We're just working on some permissions. All right, here we go. All right. And apologies to those of you that got cut off here on the side. I know there's a few more of you in this picture than what's showing, but I wanted to at least show some of you that were part of this original agreement. So thanks for having me tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm here for two reasons. The first one is to give the annual update on the Waterloo Hydro Agreement. This was something that Jonathan, our prior county attorney, used to do on a yearly basis, and so we wanted to continue that tradition, and I'll be the one doing that from here on out. The other reason we wanted to come talk to you was having to do with kind of what's going on with the energy world right now in terms of pricing and supplies and some of our contracts and how they work. You know, during your budget process, I think there was some conversation about rising energy prices. There was a little bit of confusion on how the Waterloo Hydro Agreement worked, and we thought that this would be a good opportunity to clear up some misconceptions or to just make sure that everyone had a firm understanding of not only what's going on, but really what we can expect over the next couple of years, because things are changing pretty rapidly in the energy world. So we're going to start off with just a little bit of of background here. And so some of this will be familiar to you, some of it will be pretty basic, but hopefully we can all learn something along the way. Your energy bill, and this goes for the county as well as your own personal energy bill if you pay one, has two different pieces to it. There's the delivery charges and the supply charges. And those delivery charges include things like demand charges. So if you're a large business that uses a lot of electricity, you get what's called a demand charge. Residential rates don't get this, but they're basically charging you on the most amount of electricity you're pulling from the grid at any one time. And it can be pretty expensive if you're pulling a lot of electricity. And so that's part of the delivery charges. There's some fixed charges, your connection to the grid, some of the taxes, the surcharges, credits to the different electricity and energy efficiency programs that the state has. The SBC charge is an example of this. The systems benefit charge is what that's called. And then, these all are largely basically set up in what's called the utility rate case. So in New York State, we have deregulated monopolies. NYSEG is in our area. They basically are allowed to set the rates with Public Service Commission oversight. And so that's what's going to determine the delivery charge. In the supply charges, it's a different story. Because we are deregulated, the utilities in New York State can't own the means of production. So NYSEG, National Grid, Con Edison, they don't own any power plants, so to speak. Those are all owned by third parties. And what that means is that anyone, you, me, the county, can contract with a third party to buy our electricity, or if you decide not to, it'll just default to NYSEG. And so Tompkins County currently for our electricity has a contract with Constellation, and we do this through the Municipal Electric and Gas Alliance, MEGA. For our Tompkins County accounts, we have, just about 60, 70 different accounts. There's kind of the breakdown there. Facilities is by far our largest holders of different accounts, but we do have several other departments that have accounts, including the airport, emergency response, which is largely the radio towers, the highway, which is a few different signals and streetlights, and then recycling and materials management, which is largely their three facilities that they hold there. We have another account, which is our Waterloo net metering account. That's for our hydroelectric facility that we partner with Gravity Renewables that we'll talk about in just a minute. And the important thing to know through all of this is that each of these accounts is on a different billing cycle and a billing date. Some of them are bi-monthly, some of them are monthly, some of them are quarterly, some of them are whenever NYSEG remembers to bill us for them. So it can get pretty hectic, it can get pretty confusing. We have some software to keep track of this. It's been difficult because it's not all online billing, and we've been trying to work with NYSEG to make that happen, but we've seen difficulties there as well. So we're doing our best, but there's some barriers that we're working with. In addition to that, we have some buildings that have solar leases. So if you look at a few of our different facilities, Building C, the Human Services Building, the Health Building, a lot of these have, the Mental Health Building, I think, all of them have different contracts with Solar Liberty for a solar lease. And then finally, we have the supply contracts, as I mentioned, for electricity, but also for natural gas. And then the last background piece I want to give you is what's called RECs, or Renewable Energy Certificates. And really, these are what denote whether we are using renewable electricity or not. So it's not enough to buy electricity from a hydro power plant or a solar farm. You have to have the renewable energy certificate that goes along with it. And so the example on the right is our 2021 REC certificate, essentially, from Constellation that granted us 6,693 renewable energy certificates, which enables us to then say we are using 100% renewable electricity. And that's something that we seek to do every year. It's built into our rate with Constellation, but we also get some from the hydro plant, which we'll talk about in a minute as well. So with that background, which will hopefully precede some of your questions, I'll jump right into the update for the hydro facility. And so many of you will be aware of the history. Basically, back in 2014, Gravity and Tompkins County started discussions via MEGA. By 2016, there was an agreement in place for Tompkins County to buy electricity and renewable energy certificates from the hydro facility. And since then, we've done that on a yearly basis. They've done some fantastic capital projects there, including installing this trash rake, which I think if I click right there, you'll see it in action. And that trash rake has actually resulted in a 33% increase in generation. We didn't have to put any money into that. They did that themselves, and it's been a huge boon to us, as you'll see in just a moment. So this graph is pretty busy. I don't want you to have to read the numbers or anything. I guess what I'm trying to show with this is that the generation on a monthly basis is pretty variable. You just can't guess what is going to happen. You know, sometimes it'll peak in March, oftentimes it'll peak in November, but then you'll have a year like 2020 where you get almost nothing through 2020. And if you look at this chart right here, you'll see that even on a yearly basis, it can be pretty variable as well. So last year, 2021, was actually a banner year for us. It was the most electricity generation that we've ever seen. I'm only going from 2019 on because that was after the trash rake was installed. But you'll see that in 2020, it was a low year. This year, it looks low, but because we're waiting on NYSEG to give us the last 4 months of data, it's just another issue that we've been having, unfortunately. But we expect it'll be somewhere probably in the mid 3 million to almost 4 million. So not as good as the previous year, but still pretty decent. And for context, the county uses anywhere between 6 million to 7 million kilowatt hours a year. So this is covering a fair chunk of it, anywhere from half to about 2/3 of it in any given year, which is a pretty great return. And the way it works is basically by our contract, we pay Gravity a fixed rate for every kilowatt hour that the facility produces. And in return, a monetary rate is applied to the county's accounts, and that monetary rate is set by NYSEG. And so every kilowatt hour produced, we pay some amount for it, and then we're going to get a monetary credit, and that's going to depend on a number of factors, which is part of the issue. So how does it actually work? And this is kind of a little bit where the sausage gets made and a little bit confusing. So NYSEG is going to issue us a bill that lists the production of the Waterloo facility, and that's based on that Waterloo account. We then send that bill over to Gravity, who will invoice us based on the production that's listed by NYSEG. NYSEG, in turn, returns a monetary credit throughout all of our different NYSEG accounts. And as you saw, there was a bunch of NYSEG accounts that we have. So it doesn't go to all 60, 70 of them. It mainly goes to about 6 to 7 main accounts that we have, some of the large users of electricity. So the courthouse, the human services building, public health, what you would imagine to be our large energy users. And so they'll apply that credit until there is no more credit left to put on. If there is a surplus, which there almost never is, it's carried on to the next month. And so that was something that I heard in the discussions, is there was a worry that if credits weren't completely used, that we lost them. That is not the case. They just carry over to the following month. And as I said, that's a pretty rare situation because we are a pretty large user of electricity. It's an interesting process to see it go through, and it doesn't always work the best. And so there's a few issues that I just want you to be aware of. Credits are created monthly, but as I mentioned, our accounts are billed on a very different cycle. And so it's really hard to understand exactly how the credits are being credited, because we can't say, okay, we generated 1,000 credits in March and we're going to see where they landed on our March accounts, because some of those March bills are really going to come in April or January or June or whatever it might be. And so it's pretty hard to track where they're going. We're trying our best. Gravity's helping us out, but that's one of our main difficulties that we're having. Another big issue is that no one really understands how NYSEG designates what our monetary credit is in a given month. We've asked them a number of times. We don't really have an answer. We know that it's based a little bit on how electricity is being generated in a given month, what the price is on the market, not necessarily what you see on your utility bill or what we would see on our supply bill. But we don't know if they're doing a monthly average, if they're taking the median amount, if they're taking a high or a low in that given time. And so we're just a little unsure there. And because of these uncertainties, it becomes really hard to verify that we're getting exactly what we paid for. And so we do our best, but we're having a lot of issues with that. We've talked with Gravity a little bit. There's just not a lot we can do short of bringing a case to the Public Service Commission and making complaints and possibly looking into what we can do legally. So I just want you to be aware that it's not a science. It's a little bit of an art as well. And so we're trying to give great numbers, but it's not always as good as we would like. And this is what the numbers look like. And so it's a lot of, really big numbers, really small numbers that I hope you don't try and read all on your own. So this is a little bit better. Essentially what's going on, if you look at 2022 in summary, so far, the bills that we've gotten, you can see we've gone through September. We're still waiting to find out from NYSEG what their projected credits are for September, as well as what we generated in October, November, and December. But so far through the year, we've generated about 2,700,000 kilowatt hours. For that amount, we've paid $272,000, and according to NYSEG, we've received $354,000 in monetary credit for it. So altogether, we've saved or made, depending on how you want to look at it, $82,000 through August. By the end of the year, we're probably looking at maybe 90, 95,000. It depends on November. If it was, I can't remember if it was a dry November or a wet November, but that really is what dictates our generation and really how much we made. So, you know, the overarching lesson in this is that, you know, this was a pretty good year for us. We saved a lot of money doing this. This hasn't always been the case with this agreement. 2021 was a great year for us. We saved, I think, if we look at the previous slide, I think they projected it as something like almost $128,000, so pretty good for us. So we're not quite at that level, but we're still doing pretty good. In previous years, I think this other slide showed it was about 35,000, so it can be quite a big range. Which brings us to an opportunity that we have and something that I want to explore a little bit, you know, more as we go on, and that's that we have the opportunity to monetize our RECs. And so those renewable energy certificates that we get, I mentioned we get some of them from Constellation, and what we get from Constellation actually covers all of the electricity usage for the county, and that's what allows us to claim that we use 100% renewable electricity. In addition to that, we also get the renewable energy certificates from this facility. And the better part about that is this facility is in New York State, and so they produce what's called New York State renewable energy certificates, which just so happen to be at a premium. So today on the market, they're anywhere from $9 to $15 per megawatt hour. If you were to look nationally, that's more like $3 or $4, so it's almost double the price. If you're to look at our 2022 RECs that we've generated so far, we estimate that that could be worth anywhere from $25,000 to $40,000. Our 12-month total would be anywhere from $47,000 to $80,000. So, you know, in some cases, almost doubling how much this facility would have, you know, saved us in electricity costs. We could do the same thing with renewable energy certificates. The reasons to take advantage of this, you know, obviously it can, you know, we're already covering our renewable energy pledges, so this is something that we have on top of that we're not monetizing, is just kind of sitting there, isn't really being used. So it's an opportunity. It would allow us to take advantage of the premium that we get on New York State renewable energy certificates. Some of us see it as a way to fund some additional sustainability initiatives. There's been some questions as to whether this could help fund the Business Energy Advisor Program, which has issues using taxpayer funding, since this wouldn't be using taxpayer funding. And the other option would just be to use it to offset rising electricity prices, which brings us to the harder part of this conversation, which is our 2023 energy procurement. And it's not a great story. You've probably all seen the headlines: electricity prices, supply prices, natural gas prices, they're all rising. And it's happening all across the country, but you know, it's something that we're facing in New York State as well, because we're also looking, I think one of those headlines showed, at NYSEG doing a rate hike, which is for that delivery portion of our bill. And what we're looking at is probably a 20% plus rate increase from NYSEG based on their initial rate case submission. So we won't know until May what that'll look like, but I would expect it to be high. So currently we pay about $50.95 per megawatt hour. You know, if you want to convert that to kilowatt hours, it's about 5 cents a kilowatt hour, almost 0.051 cents. In conversations with Constellation, we're expecting this to rise about 50%. So we're looking at anywhere from $7 to $8. This graph on the right shows what the electricity market's doing right now. You know, right now, even at a strike price that we've talked about with Constellation, about $75 a megawatt hour, you know, it's tough to get there at different parts of the year. Lately it's been closer to $80 basically. like I said, expecting a 20% rise on the NYSEG side at least, so we could be looking at a 70% total rise for this year. If we're looking out multiple years, NYSEG rates are going to probably increase for the next 3 years if they get a multi-year rate case settlement. So expect electricity rates to rise. So we have some decisions incoming. With our new contract, our current contract expires in November. We can do a new contract. We have to think about how long we'll do that for. We've done it for 3-year contracts pretty much every time it's come time for renewal. It's a little bit of an unprecedented time right now with the war in Ukraine and some of the other things going on. Is it worth doing a 12-year contract and seeing where we're at, or excuse me, a 12-month contract and seeing where we're at? It might be. In conversations with Constellation, they say that it looks pretty flat right now over 3 years, and so they're encouraging a 3-year contract, but it's still something for us to think about. There's been conversations of how we can leverage our hydro contract with our supply contract, so a little inverse relationship. As actually the electricity prices rise, our hydro credits are worth more, and so we're somewhat protected in that sense for about, as I said, a half to 2/3 of our electricity supply. So we could just do an energy contract for the remainder and just let it ride on the other side and not worry too much about it. The danger being, just to make it clear, if we engage in a 3-year contract and prices substantially drop, then we're losing a lot of money in that sense. There's no indication that it'll happen, but just something to be aware of. Other decisions, should we sell the RECs, as I just talked about? How should that revenue be utilized if we're going to? And then looking at our electrification program, our green facilities programs, how is that going to impact our bills? If we're going to be moving to electrified assets, should we be looking more at additional investments in generation assets? This latest market rise, we've been insulated somewhat, in part because of the supply contract, in large part because of the supply contract, but also because of our investment and our agreement with the Waterloo facility. Is that something we should be looking to do with solar carports, or for instance, if we were to put in a solar array at the Caswell landfills? Certainly something that we would want to consider as providing a long-term benefit versus the volatile energy market. So in terms of next steps, just to be aware of, so at this time I was still thinking we would be talking to PDEC. I guess we'll be talking to PEAK about potential REC sales, what that would look like, what it would necessitate, if there's any appetite for that at the county level. We'll continue to work with our mega consultants on the 2023 energy contracts, looking at the different options. And then we'll see what happens with the Caswell landfill and try and look at what's going on with other generation assets potentials. If it does make sense to try and do something with our large parking lots, another possible power purchase agreement, or whether it's worth trying to do something with capital. So these are all things we'll be taking to PEAK and some of our facilities committees and things that we'll discuss over this upcoming year. So I'll end it there, and I'll take any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for coming in today. Are there any questions for Terry? Greg Mezzi, then Mike Sigler.
After concluding my first year, we definitely move a little bit at a glacial pace when it comes to some of these decision-making efforts. It sounds like we're just sort of at a loss for 2023, or are there things that we can quickly and actionably do that we can get in front of the committees sooner rather than later, so that we don't sort of bite the bullet on such rising energy costs? Like, can we be aggressive, I guess, in a strategy to backstop a potentially 70% increase in energy costs for 2023?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not much we're going to be able to do for this upcoming contract. We're kind of beholden to the market whims right now for 2023 and the next couple of years. Some of it is looking beyond that, past this 3-year contract to what happens the next time around. So, what I mentioned was investments in generation assets as an example of that, or, possibly selling the renewable energy certificates. So the hope is, probably in the next couple of months to bring to PEAK a proposal of what it would look like if we were to sell the renewable energy certificates. We're just waiting on gravity to put that together. And then hopefully midway through this year to bring to PEAK in facilities, something related to the Caswell landfill and possibly the solar carport idea.
Could we sell our RECs in 2023?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is still an option.
That is still an option, yeah.
Mike Sigler.
I actually had 2 questions. So how much do we use, like, as a county, I mean, the highest we were able to get was what, 966 kilowatt hours. Do we use that much? And if we don't use that much, what happens to the extra?
So what happens is the amount that we use gets turned into a monetary credit. It gets applied to our accounts, and if there's any left over, it then goes on to the next billing cycle. And so if, we didn't use all of the March credits in that March bill, it would then go to the April bill and then carry on and so forth. That's what we've been told. As I've said, it's hard to verify some of these things, and so we're trying to work right now with Gravity is to truly verify that that's actually happening.
I mean, it doesn't sound like, from what you were saying, that electricity will really go down anytime. Yeah. We've talked about this before. Are there any hydro assets? I know the county did a study under Ed Marks. There was about 88 megawatts within the county. A lot of that was Fall Creek, so we kind of discount that. But
yeah, I mean, there are some opportunities. I think the hard part, and you and I have talked about this, Mike. If there was land that the county owned where there was a perfect site for this, I think it would be a really easy thing for us to try and explore. The best sites that we see right now are either in Cornell's hands or the city of Ithaca's hands, and so far neither has really shown any indication of wanting to pursue it any further than, Cornell already has their hydro facility, and the city of Ithaca, I think, is more concerned about the actual structural sanctity of the dams than they are about using them as a potential generation asset. So what we've done is tried to make sure that they're informed about the incentives that are available from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act and some of the other things going on, but we can't force them to build it, unfortunately.
I'm just wondering if the county can't build it
if they gave us permission, yeah. If they told us, hey, we're willing to house this on your behalf, and you can do the agreement, there hasn't been any indication that that's something that they want to explore at this point.
Mike Lane?
On that point, maybe we ought to give them a little nudge. Maybe PDAC can look at that. Wanted to ask some questions about Mega, and I don't know if you don't know the answer, just tell me. But Mega started here years ago in Tompkins County. Are we still the central county for Mega?
No, we aren't anymore.
Who is?
Oh, I don't know that. I think the last time I heard it was one of the counties that starts with O, and so I think you have 5 or 6 choices there.
Otsego. Yeah, we lost that a few years ago because then we had some legislators who were raising a lot of issues with Mega, not understanding the purpose of Mega, which was to try to get low electrical and gas prices for the allied counties that were involved and other municipalities. The other question I had, Jonathan Wood was the attorney for Mega for many years. I don't think he is anymore. I wondered who is.
I don't know. I think they've had a lot of turnover there. I think you might know their new executive director is Mark Levine, who's also works for the Association of Counties. And so they have a board meeting, I think, coming up that we'll be attending. I'm sure we'll get some information. I'm sure I can pass it on to you as soon as we find out.
Yeah, we used to get like an annual presentation from them, and I wondered I don't think we've had one recently, have we?
Not during my tenure, no.
Well, there's another thing we probably should be looking at since this was our baby. I think it's kind of moved out of the dorm and out of the house at this point. Thank you, Terry.
Ann Corman?
Thank you for the presentation, Terry. So just two things. I just wanted to mention when Peak does look at the RECs, whether we should sell them or not, there are some downsides to selling them too. So we'll be talking about those later. But Caswell, I think this has been talked about before at the full legislature. Or do people need a primer on that again of what's in the works? Or okay. So, but that's something we'll be getting more. Yeah. So I'll be in, when we get to that point where how much could we possibly produce, and how much we could take advantage. So that is something that is in the works, and so I appreciate you keeping up on that for us.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Terry?
I have a related question for Lisa or Norma. I can't remember, how much did we budget for 2023 for electricity and utilities?
I'd have to look at the exact numbers. We budgeted for an increase. I don't know that it was a 70% increase.
And I should say that increase won't be felt until 2024, so certainly that's something to plan for your 2024 budget. So our supply contract runs through November, so the only month that will really feel any hit is December. And then the NYSEG rate case won't kick in until later this year as well. So we're somewhat insulated this year, but next year is when we'll start to feel that.
Thank you.
Hope that means I don't have to change my state of the county address. That'll be the next chair's issue. Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Terry.
Yeah, thank you.
Lots of information there.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a report by County Administrator Lisa Holmes.
Madam Chair, I have a couple of brief updates, and then I have also a presentation this evening. So for the updates, I wanted to make, I made the legislature aware, but I wanted to state publicly and make the public aware that after a search process, I'm pleased to inform everyone that Norma Jane has been chosen as the Deputy County Administrator.
Our budget director.
We are going to have a search. But I think hopefully you'll agree Norma's contribution of skills and experience and her extensive knowledge of the county make her ideal for the role. And among her other duties that she'll be assuming, she'll continue to be assisting with the budget database transition and training a new budget director once we go through that search and hiring process. So congratulations to Norma. We have, once again, the Chief Equity Diversity Officer position posted. We're right now in a period of outreach and recruitment. Please, again, share the opportunity among your networks, and those applications are due on February 5th. And we have posted the RFP for the grant consultant to assist our organization in identifying and applying for federal, state, and other grant opportunities. So we will be, after that period is up, we will be reviewing those proposals and moving forward there. And then I have a presentation that I encourage everyone, if you want to take a little stretch, feel free. I'm going to share my screen. I wanted to share departmental achievements. Right, excellent. So I'm pleased tonight to have the opportunity to update our legislature and the public on the accomplishments of our county departments in 2022. This compilation is just going to scratch the surface of the day-to-day work of our county staff and illustrate what our county does for the community. For the sake of time, I'm just going to run through the slide deck rather quickly. I'm not going to go over every detail on each slide, but we'll be sure to distribute this presentation for your reference afterwards. And I want to extend my thanks to Dominic Recchio for putting this together, as well as Rob Henry for the great photos you're about to see. So starting with our Health and Human Service departments, in 2022, our Office for the Aging started implementing innovations from the state to target social isolation among our elders and strengthen caregiver supports. They hired their own home health aide in the office to address the critical shortage and better serve clients. They increased the number of emergency response machines in people's homes and increased the number of volunteers and provided a presence in all of the regional nursing facilities through the long-term care ombudsman program. Our Office of Human Rights was part of the local Your Voice, Your Vote Civic Engagement Coalition, launching an event at Southside Community Center. They held programming in 2022 addressing critical race theory, civic engagement, a kickoff event for Pride Week, and Juneteenth events, among others. Our Department of Social Services saw the transition of 4 division leaders in 2022, each having more than 30 years of service to the county. DSS surpassed the Family First goals set by the state, placing more foster children in kinship care and fewer in institutions. Through the STEP Rapid Rehousing Program, 34 people, or 89%, exited to permanent housing. And through the ESG Rapid Rehousing Program, 55 households enrolled and 44 people, or 77%, exited to permanent housing. In 2022, our Departments of Public and Mental Health completed the merger to form the Tompkins County Whole Health Department to better address the root causes of health disparities and integrate mental, physical, and environmental health. They secured $255,000 over 5 years to implement community health workers to enhance outreach to our community. 2022 was still a very busy year with communicable disease management, including COVID-19, monkeypox, and flu. And the department led the distribution of nearly 90,000 free COVID self-testing kits and nearly 500,000 free KN95 masks throughout our community. The department is nearly fully staffed, returning to open access same-day intake at the mental health clinic and implementing a comprehensive training plan to improve care delivery. In our county youth services, 2022 saw the reopening of the Open Doors Runaway and Homeless Youth Program of Family and Children's Service, as youth homelessness is an area of great concern and high priority. They created 2 new youth commissions in Danby and Newfield, and worked within the municipal youth services system to implement a new vitality checklist for planning and goal setting. Through our county veterans services, the names of Tompkins County's fallen were presented at the Moving Wall exhibition of the Vietnam War Memorial in Elmira. We organized a dedication event for the Military Courtesy Lounge at our county airport, which marked the first gathering of the county's Gold Star families from recent conflicts. And we now have $100,000 in ongoing grant funds to support veterans through the state's Joseph Dwyer Peer Support Program. On to our public safety departments. The Department of Emergency Response's Zach Guidi received national and regional honors as Dispatcher of the Year. The first phase of our backup dispatch center project was completed, including important system redundancies and updating the emergency services radio system. They transitioned to the new Siren emergency notification system, held the first ever emergency preparedness and safety resource fair, and developed the Cayuga Lake Task Force, a coordinated response for emergencies on the lake. Now on to our district attorney's office, who successfully prosecuted 6 felony jury trials in county court. Our DA participated in the Beyond Big Cities program at John Jay College, sharing best practices for progressive prosecution in smaller jurisdictions across the county. Our DA's office fully supported alternatives to prosecution, including LEAD, and alternatives to incarceration, including the various treatment courts. Our county probation department restored day reporting program operations in 2022, serving 102 people. They piloted the use of community service as a restorative justice practice where appropriate, and over 1,000 hours of service were performed. They reopened hundreds of old restitution cases to comply with New York State guidance and best practice. They worked with the Sheriff's Office and Department of Emergency Response to enhance officer safety by becoming active on the police radio system while probation officers are in the field. They revised and resumed the provision of DWI victim impact panels, and staff completed training to become a trauma-informed agency. Our county sheriff's office, let's see. Okay, our county sheriff's office completed the One Mind Pledge, committing to strategies for successful interactions between law enforcement and persons with mental health conditions and developmental disabilities. They implemented centralized arraignment court, something that had been discussed in our community for many years. They also implemented the unarmed clerk pilot program under Reimagining Public Safety. In coordination with REACH, medical telehealth services were provided at the jail in 2022, including healthy transition bags when people are released. And congratulations to our Undersheriff Jen Olin, who graduated from the 10-week FBI National Academy. In 2022, our assigned counsel program secured a New York State grant for early intervention family court representation, one of only 15 across the state. They expanded the use of the e-vouchering billing system to all the local justice courts in the county, and they received state approval for implementation of years 4 and 5 of the Hurrell Herring grant, providing an additional $1.5 million to support mandated representation for criminal matters. Now on to our Facilities and Infrastructure Committee departments. In 2022, our Weights and Measures Department put into use a new 150-gallon prover to measure vehicle tank meters for home heating oil delivery. They sold the previous 100-gallon prover as well as other older departmental vehicles at auction. And the department continues to develop a database on Laserfiche to organize and store inspection data. In 2022, our Highway Department resurfaced over 18 miles and preserved over 30 miles of county roadways. They installed over 3,400 feet of culvert pipe. They completed construction on the Etna Lane Bridge, the Coddington German Cross intersection, and made safety improvements on Game Farm Road. Our airport completed its third zero discrepancy Part 139 safety inspection. The LED lighting taxiway capital project was completed in 2022. The Legacy Cafe celebrated a full year of operation, providing great food and customer service. And twice daily service to JFK was announced in 2022 and began just last week. In 2022, our Facilities Department kicked off the Green Facilities Capital Project across all county buildings. They installed and upgraded EV charging stations across the organization, modified offices within several county departments, added security cameras in various county department locations, completed 4 elevator upgrade projects, and approved the contracts to begin the work on the public safety building in 2023. And as you can see in this photo, the in-floor radiant heating system was installed in the Highway Department in 2022 as part of a facilities capital project. Now on to the departments that fall under Planning, Development, and Environmental Quality. In 2022, our Workforce Development Board restarted the Services to Individuals with Disabilities Committee, updated the local in-demand occupations list, served 139 youth through the Summer Youth Employment Program, and developed a transferable skills curriculum in partnership with DST BOCES. Our Workforce New York Office of Employment and Training assisted 40 participants with funding for training and placed 44 youth in summer employment at 18 local businesses. They established several community partnerships to offer employment opportunities, language tutoring, and job-related supports, and attended or helped coordinate multiple job fairs and events. Our Recycling Materials Management Department made progress toward finalizing its 10-year waste reduction and recycling plan, which will be delivered in March of 2023 to the Legislature. Its paving upgrade project was completed on time within budget. In May, they implemented a separate glass collection at the recycling center drop-off, amounting to approximately 10 tons of glass. And they started another food scrap drop spot at the Trumansburg Farmers Market, making for 16 across the county, with some 600 tons of food scraps being composted at Cayuga Compost and thereby diverted from the landfill. In 2022, our Department of Planning and Sustainability dispersed monies through the Community Housing Development Fund to support construction of 130 affordable housing units. They completed the Resiliency and Recovery Plan to help the community recover more quickly after a disaster. They updated the county's green fleet policy and supported the purchase of 18 new electric vehicles and 5 charging stations for county departments, and assisted 8 new construction projects through the Business Energy Advisors Program. And then finally, we have the departments that fall under government operations and budget, capital, and personnel committees. Our county assessment department received the 23rd consecutive Excellence in Assessing Award from New York State, the only department across the state achieving this in all 23 years. The 2022 annual equity maintenance program resulted in over 23,000 changes in assessment, with only 6% of those changes contested. In 2022, the total assessed value rose by $740 million. In 2022, our finance department worked to maintain the county's AA1 credit rating, completed 5 audits, and began investing with New York Class, which gained us around $75,000 in interest. Our treasury foreclosed on 105 parcels for non-payment of property taxes. Of those, 92 were redeemed, which is a great success, and only 13 went to public auction. In 2022, our Board of Elections ran 5 village elections and 4 countywide elections and worked with several school districts to help them run their elections. They implemented a new law to include absentee ballots received 4 days prior to Election Day and the vote totals reported on election night. Our Information Technology Services Department managed a 41% increase in work orders received from county staff. They continue to stay up to date on the many advancements in cybersecurity to keep our county networks and systems safe. They completed necessary network expansions, facilitated security camera and DVR storage, supported over 150 forms and processes on the Laserfish system for departments, and piloted a new tax map and address management interface through GIS. In 2022, our Department of Human Resources made several improvements to internal processes and workflows, developed a buddy system for new hires, and redesigned our new employee orientation to enhance the diversity, equity, and inclusion focus. HR provides civil service administration for 55 civil divisions, supporting about 2,000 positions. They reviewed 4,500 employment applications, conducted 100 civil service exams, and our 2022 employee picnic was enjoyed by over 415 attendees. In 2022, our county clerk advanced the goals of a paperless office by increasing e-recording of land records and e-filing of court records. They assisted customers with real ID or enhanced licenses prior to the federal deadline. They collected over $19.4 million in revenue for New York State, the county, and towns. And notably, customers consistently rate our DMV with approval ratings between 95 and 100%. What DMV can say that? In 2022, county administration engaged MRB Group to administer the $6.5 million in Community Recovery Grant Program funds, and the legislature made the tough but good decisions to allocate those funds. We worked with the county's negotiating team on a long-term transportation service agreement for TCAT involving the city, county, and Cornell. We conducted 20 building site visits to update the county's workplace violence prevention plans and submitted a plan to New York State to address threats of domestic terror. We successfully oversaw the county's 2023 budget process with plans for new budget software underway, and we increased the county's informational reach to over 40,000 individuals through the use of the Gov Delivery newsletter software. Our county attorney's office collected in excess of $200,000 in room tax arrears in 2022. They brought over 50 petitions to family court to serve youth and families and protect the community, and they completed 237 FOIL requests. The clerk of the legislature's office made all this happen in 2022, 150 meetings, 8 public hearings, 276 resolutions, 5 local laws, and 150 advisory board appointments. Staff welcomed and onboarded 5 new legislators and transitioned the duties of our former legislature clerk, Kathy Covert, who was with us for 36 years. And last but certainly not least, in 2022, our county legislature allocated over $6 million through the Community Recovery Fund, passed the county's 2023 budget, accepted the recommendations of our independent redistricting commission calling for new districts and a 16-member legislature to go into effect in 2026, celebrated Juneteenth as a paid county holiday, and made investments in reimagining public safety, local EMS services, green energy capital projects, and many other initiatives which continue to keep Tompkins County on the map for our leadership and innovation. So I want to note that none of these achievements took place in a vacuum, but rather with collaboration between and among departments, with our community and municipal partners, and under the policy guidance and direction of the legislature. So this is a thank you to all of our staff for a year of hard work and collaboration. And again, this is just a 10,000-foot overview of what our county departments do every day, and one of many ways of telling the story of what our local government does for our community. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Are there any questions or comments for Lisa Holmes? Mike Lane.
Why didn't we do something? That was an amazing report. Thank you for that.
Ann Corman. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
Excuse me, I just wondered, were you going to mention anything about the historian?
Oh, yes, thank you, Mike. So I did meet with the county historian, Carol Kamen, a couple of weeks ago, who made it known her intention to retire, and for us to set forth on a search for someone to fill that position, not to replace her, but to fill that position. So I'm going to be working with our legislature and members of the Historic Commission to announce that and make it known, look at the job description and begin that process in the near future. Thank you, Mike.
Ann Corman.
Thank you for a great presentation, and thank you to your administration, clerks, our staff, our advisory boards, everybody for a lot of work that was done, accomplished this year. I had a question. So I had just printed out the Tompkins County departmental goals for PDEC that I looked up from last January, I believe it was. And so this kind of correlates with that, because I was going to ask you, Lisa, following up on these through committee, because often at committees we look at the yearly goals, and last year for PDEC, for instance, we decided not to have goals. We decided to just go with, and this, I know this was fairly new too, maybe the first year that I've been here, that you gave us all these goals that the different departments were going to be working on. Is there anything else, and maybe we could talk about it more at committee, to follow up that committee you would like us to do, to follow up on things from last year?
Sure. And well, I think so each department and each department head assesses the progress toward their departmental goals and carries over into the following year any goals that are still on the agenda. I have, at the last department head meeting, spoke with my colleagues about looking at their goals, coming up with their goals for 2023 to include with their respective committees in February. So they are working on their goals, their updated goals now to share with committees. So as the newly formed committees are establishing committee goals, they can hopefully be in alignment and moving in the same direction as our departmental goals and objectives.
Okay, so it seems like this could kind of wait till February with the new committees then?
Yes.
And you've already done the review, it looks like, of the goals for each one. Okay. And just to follow up to that, this is 3 pages. 2 of them are front and back. So this was all the committee goal, or the department goals are very extensive just for PDEC. And as people saw here, there's just so many goals. So that was one of the reasons why we decided we don't need to add anything else. We just decided we're going to support, the departments as much as possible because we thought the goals were very, I want to say the right word, robust, so thank you for giving us this update.
Sure. Thank you, Ann.
Mike Sigler?
Just curious, you had mentioned through all of that security cameras being installed. Are those security cameras just something we record for use if there is an incident, or are those plugged into something? Or is there like a response security?
They are used after the fact if there are issues. We have a policy on the use of the security cameras and what they can be used for, and certainly when requested by law enforcement, we always cooperate and share them. So it's often with incidents around law enforcement or other sorts of things in and around our buildings.
Gotcha. Next.
Greg Mezzi?
Yeah, fantastic presentation. I couldn't imagine being part of another county, right? I mean, when you think about everything that we've been able to do and the incredible staff that we have, what I'm asking, though, is how does your presentation get memorialized for historical sake? Does it get entered as a copy into the minutes or into the agenda packet? I guess where would that live for someone who would want to go back and sort of look at past years' accomplishments live on? And I know we probably don't have them for past years, but moving forward, I think it would be nice if these type of presentations and maybe the chair's state of the county were memorialized in some way for historical context.
Katrina Pipin?
The state of the county is put on the website, and I do have a note to put that up tomorrow, and we do have those copies from years past. As for Lisa's presentation, we will save it in minute track. It'll be attached to the minutes.
Great.
It won't show up in the minutes when they're printed, but it will be a file in our meeting software program.
So it's searchable and discoverable for the future.
Any other questions or comments for Lisa? Dominic?
If I could just add on, I'm forwarding you all, I had put together a press release as well announcing those achievements with the attachment. So you'll all have that. It already lives on the county's website in the 2023 news. And that link will be there for quite some time.
Great. Thank you, Dominic. Okay, let's move on. Next is Bill Troy, County Attorney.
I have nothing to report.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Next is Drew Brayman, Interim Director of Finance.
I do have 3 quick items to report on tonight. Our bond sale that's slated for February is ongoing. We met with Moody's this past week. They've changed some of their methodologies on reporting for counties and cities, which since we have a very large student population, it may impact us. We have another meeting with them next week to get our rating. And the week after that, we'll be issuing the next bond issuance. So we're still on schedule for that. The 2 other items I just received from New York State, our report for December sales tax. So I'll be compiling that in the next week or so. And we've kicked off 3 of our audits. The Maine County audit is in the works. And the task, the Tobacco Securities Corporation is ongoing, and the IDA audit is also ongoing. We do have a meeting. I'm not sure if folks are aware. This is exciting accounting news that GASB has a new accounting requirement on leases. So tomorrow we have a meeting on how we're going to account for any leases. This is both income money leases, such as when we bought Key Bank in the professional services building. We have leases and we're receiving income on those. And also like photocopiers that we have leases on that go on indefinitely. We tend to purchase most of our vehicles and stuff ourselves, so we don't have ongoing leases, so we avoid this. So I don't think it'll be a big issue for us, but it will be an exciting, riveting meeting, I'm sure. So. Our staff is still working through the vacancies, worked with Ruby last week, and she did get the Director of Finance up and going on the website, so that is open, that posting, and also secured a recruiting firm to help us out on this search. So that's all exciting news. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Drew. Appreciate it. And next, I would like to recognize Clerk Katrina McCloy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you're aware, we have a Chief Deputy Clerk position vacant in the office, and I would like to recommend and request the Legislature's confirmation to appoint Brittany Greep as Chief Deputy Clerk of the Legislature.
That will be moved by Deborah Dawson, seconded by Lee Shirtliff. And we do have to do a roll call for that.
Yes, we do. Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Absolutely, yes.
Rich John's not here. Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Absolutely.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
I have 12 ayes and 0 noes.
Speech. No.
Congratulations to Norma and Brittany tonight. Great night of celebration. Okay, next we are going to move on to the consent. Actually, are there any resolutions to be added or withdrawn from the agenda? See none. Let's move on to consent agenda. Resolutions and appointments to be voted on as a group unless any member of the legislature requests that a resolution or appointment be instead included separately and individually as part of the business of standing and special committees. Advisory Board appointments, ID 11412, James Dennis, at-large member for the Historical Commission. Term expires December 31st, 2025. Government Operations Committee, Resolution A, to amend Resolution number 2021 through 266 of December 7th, 2021, determination and certification of county clerk's allowance, annual expenses for administering mortgage tax, ID 11391. Resolution B, delegation of authority to authorize certain tax refunds and credits of $2,500 and under, ID 11381. Resolution C, authorizing a public hearing on proposed law, local law number blank of 2023, a local law authorizing section 466-A of the New York State Real Property Tax Law, a property tax exemption to volunteer firefighters and volunteer ambulance workers, ID 11399. Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. Resolution D, Budget Adjustment, County Administration, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, ID 11394. Resolution E, Delegation of Authority to authorize certain tax and solid waste fee refunds under $500, ID 11382. Resolution F, authorizing 2022 capital improvement and workforce development pilot program payments for Tompkins Cortland Community College operating budget, ID 11377. Resolution G, Budget Adjustment, County Administration, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, D, Fund, and CL Fund, ID 11408. Resolution H, Budget Adjustment for Mental Health Staff Retention Funding Distribution, ID 11388. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Randy Brown, seconded by Travis Brooks. And we will do a roll call vote.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
12 ayes, 0 noes. Motion passes.
Thank you. Now on to standing and special committees. Health and Human Services Committee, Dan Klein, Chair.
The Health and Human Services Committee did not meet last week. We had nothing on the agenda, so we canceled our meeting. And like all the other committees tonight, the next iteration is yet to be scheduled.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for Dan Klein? Okay, Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Mike Lane, Chair.
Our next meeting is this Thursday at 9 o'clock. And I just want to confirm that this is the old committee, is that right?
It will be the old committee till February 2nd.
All right. And
February
I'd like
1st,
to,
sorry.
Send an invitation out to our 2 new members. If they'd like to join us for this meeting, we'd be glad to have them.
Great. Any questions for Mike Lane? Okay. Next is Government Operations Committee, Amanda Champion, Chair.
Thank you. We did meet a couple of weeks ago. I'm completely lost track of time. And you see numerous resolutions here, which were the majority of what we discussed. And we also looked back at our goals and accomplishments from the previous year. And as Dan said, we'll be looking at the coming year at our next meeting, which will be in February. And then I have a couple of resolutions.
Any questions for Amanda or comments? Okay.
Okay. We have Resolution I, appropriation from contingent fund, funds for RP-467, ID 11411.
Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Mike Lane.
And Jay is here if there are questions, but this is, you can thank the state for this. This is extra funding that the Department of Assessment needs because the state has said that every county needs to send out a second mailing to residential properties.
Okay. Randy Brown?
I just have a question. What is that mailing exactly? Just
Jay could maybe answer, but I think it's related to the low-income senior exemption.
Correct. The second notice, the first notice you just received on January 1st on your tax bill, it just says that if you are over 65 years of age, there is the low-income senior. So besides the targeted mailing that our state representatives are doing, the targeted mailing that the Department of Taxation and Finance is doing, we get to mail this out to all 24,000 residential parcels just to make things more confusing, I guess. So unfortunately, this was signed into law, I think, December 23rd or so. And we're not following it to the T. The law says that every municipal corporation has to do this. So that would mean that the towns would also have to send it out, the villages, the city. So this notice right here, we're doing cooperatively. So all of us are sending this one out because we're not sending out duplicate notices.
thank you.
Mike Lane?
I think this might have been said at the GO committee, but Jay, would we call this an unfunded state mandate?
I would definitely call this is going to cost the residents of New York State about $1.8 million is what I've been able to gather from the other real property tax directors. And we'll be talking about this tomorrow, 9:30, when we set our legislative agenda.
So it's New York State saying counties and other municipalities, you will do that at your expense.
Exactly.
Thanks.
Well, we seniors love to get extra mail.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
12 ayes, 0 noes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'd skip over to the suspension of local boards of assessment review resolution since Jay is still here, and that's ID 11400, and I would move that.
Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Greg Mezzi.
And this, we talked extensively about this at GO, and we have in past years. And over the past 5 years or so, we've gone back and forth suspending these meetings, and then I believe we had them last year, and now we're saying we'd like to suspend them again. You can see all the information from assessment and the number of residents who came to the various municipalities, and we believe that it's not the best use of time and money, so we're recommending we suspend them again.
Thank you. Randy Brown, Mike Sigler.
I'd just like to note that both Newfield and Enfield still would like them, but I understand they both have told me that. I know Enfield only had 1 or 2, I think, people, and Newfield had the most at 9, I think. And I was in attendance at both of those. And I did find that, at least the ones in Newfield, most of the people were just uninformed about what their tax bill meant. And 3 of them had no idea what STAR program meant, and they did qualify for that. So we gave them the documentation for that. So I realize it's, so my question to Jay is what's the alternative for the people?
Sorry about that. There's a couple other ways that we address this. One thing is we hold informal assessment review meetings each year. So, we'll be sending out another 25,000 change notices on February 10th. And that's really where we want people to come and talk to us. And we'll be able to provide whatever information. Whenever someone comes in for an informal review, we go through their inventory, we make sure that they have all the exemptions possible. But that's really the first step, and that's a step that doesn't happen in other assessor offices across the state. That's something that we're going to hold each year, regardless of whether we make 10 changes or 25,000. The next step is the formal assessment review process. Where you come in at the next step for the local boards of assessment review with our county board of assessment review. But it's really, people just need to reach out to us and ask us if there's really any questions. And there's so much that we can do by getting our information out there. The newsletter through eGov delivery that Dom created, I think is doing a great job to that. I know it's added some work to me, and it's fun getting that out. I'm not normally a writer, I'm a numbers person, so it's been fun doing that, something different. So I appreciate that, but that's a good avenue to get that out. And the more word that we can spread to get people signed up for that, I think will be great for all county departments as well.
Thank you.
Mike Sigler.
I know the arguments against these. I would like to make the argument for them. I plan to vote against this, and I like these. These are one of the few times I think that we give the public an opportunity outside of this actual building and outside of downtown to come and talk with us. I've clearly over 20 years seen, and it's been longer than that, obviously, a decline in civic participation. I guess I understand it. People are busy, and I saw that ramp up over COVID, whereas right now I see people kind of re-engaging. I hope they start going to things again. I think that there's a lot of value. I think there's a lot of value of having us all here instead of on Zoom. I've never been a big fan of Zoom. I understand why it was necessary. I never liked it, and I think it did harm us as a county, as a nation. I think this is an opportunity for people to come and visit us in their local town halls and say, listen, this is the problem I have with my assessment. And assessment is something that a lot of people have on their minds. And I think that it removes maybe a barrier for them to come and talk with us. I know that barrier shouldn't exist, but I think it does. And I will say, at least in Lansing, the cases that come in front of us, a good number of them have some merit. There aren't a lot of them, but more than half, I would say, you look at it and you go, yeah, I can see what this person is saying. And it's not the person that hasn't sided their house to try to get their assessment lower. it's simply not those cases. Most of the people I have that come in have good comps, and you go, yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me. And it frankly is just another point of engagement. And I think we need that more now after COVID than maybe even beforehand. So that's why I'm in support of these things continuing, and that's why I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb Dawson and then Greg Muzzy.
Yeah, I understand your concerns, Mike. I do. But first of all, I don't see these meetings as an optimal point of engagement between our constituents and us as elected representatives, because they're really coming in to question something that we don't know all that much about. And I also think that their time is probably more productively used if they go directly to Jay's office or use his formal procedure to evaluate their concerns about their assessment. So I'm going to support this resolution, not because I disagree with you on the need for engagement, but I just don't think that this is particularly the best form of engagement. I wish my constituents, I have a couple of constituents who call me all the time, and that's it. I don't hear from the rest of them. You know, I send the semi-annual newsletters are out through the various village websites, and I never hear anything. So if you're out there, talk to me, you know, but not about your assessment.
Greg Muzzy.
Sounds like Deb's really looking for something to do. Now that you're not vice chair this year, Deb. Yeah. I also hear Mike's concern, but having sat through this past year, one, I thought the training that Jay and his team, or Jay's team, did for this was very helpful, and I hope that that opportunity can continue, maybe on a semi-regular basis for legislators and other municipal officials, because that really gave a good education to those of us that aren't professionals in the arena, a good solid footing to be able to have those engagement conversations on. So that's number one. The challenge I had with it is it didn't do anything. I mean, you sit there and you say, oh, maybe the professionals were wrong, maybe they weren't, but we'll pass it on to them for review. And the board didn't really have any meat or teeth to sort of sink into the concern of the constituent. So I feel like you can get that in a phone call or at the grocery store or at the football game or whatever the case may be. I just didn't find it to be the most beneficial use of time. I guess I would have a question for Jay too, as a follow-up for the informal reviews. Will you be allowing, or if somebody requests a virtual meeting or a phone call rather than an in-person, will they be able to interact with your office in more than just an in-person method?
For the informal reviews, we're going to do them all by phone call.
Okay.
Typically, they're only 5-10 minutes long. It doesn't take long to present the information and for us to know what we need to do to review it, whether to take that information or a field inspection is the next step. So just by handling the amount of people that are coming in and almost cycling through our office, we just don't have that space or being able to handle it. And plus COVID kind of made things easier that way. And just, someone doesn't have to come downtown, try to pay for parking, get into our office, 5 minutes later, they're heading back out. So we found the phone calls to be the best approach for the informal assessment review process. For the formal Board of Assessment Review meetings, it's a little more difficult trying to schedule a virtual and in-house, but I'll talk with our Board of Assessment Review and see what they want to do, and we may be able to have one of our panels be a hybrid. But yes, we would much prefer to meet people in person as well.
I mean, I think too, to the point, like I don't feel that this limits access to the assessment department, and I feel like Jay and his team are open to looking to solutions to meet people where they need to be met.
Thank you, Greg. Any other comments? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Mike Sigler,
No.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
No.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
No.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
No.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
8 ayes, 4 noes, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And Amanda,
Yeah.
you have one more?
Thanks, I have one more.
Okay.
And thanks, Jay, for being here. This is resolution to update administrative policy manual, policy 1-30, general business hours for Tompkins County government offices and departments, ID 11385.
Okay, can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Travis Brooks.
And this is just a very small update, adding in Juneteenth to our official policy. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, let's vote.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
12 ayes, 0 noes, motion passes.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Amanda Champion? Okay, thank you, Amanda. Next is Planning, Development, and Environmental Quality Committee, Ann Corman, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have our next meeting, or our last meeting of the year, Monday, January 23rd at 1:30. And on our agenda, we have the New York State Energy and Climate updates, a couple of routine grants, reinstatement, including the Municipal Parks and Trails Grant Program. And we're going to be reviewing the 2023 Housing Affordability Grant Program guidelines. We'll be getting a tourism update, and I think this has been of interest to quite a few people. The Ithaca Downtown Conference Center update we'll be having. And those are the main things. And I just wanted to say, for folks that are going to be either in peak next year, as other folks have said, or if you're going to be in HED committees, I invite you to attend, Zoom in, or watch the reviews, or watch the recording on Zoom. And anything else you want to say? I want to thank my Vice Chair, Greg Mezzi. Anything else you want to add? Okay, thank you.
It's like Greg started as a caterpillar and is growing into a butterfly. It's very nice, very nice.
The very hungry caterpillar.
Okay, next up. Next up is the Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee. Dan Klein, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we did not meet this month, but as we heard in the new committee assignments, we are going to have to meet some in 2023. We're projecting quarterly, so that's what we should plan for. But I think what we'll need to do is pick a date, monthly date and time that we can meet. So if everyone that's the new members of that committee could meet during our break to try and bring your calendars to try to figure out a time to meet, that would be great. If we can accomplish that quickly, then you can go have your cookies.
Any questions for Dan Klein? Okay, moving on to Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Ann Corman and Veronica Pillar, members.
I don't think we've met since our last meeting. We'll be meeting January, trying to think now. I want to say the 25th. That sound right? Next Wednesday. And we just have, there's a draft agenda out. I don't have it in front of me. Do you have that in front of you, Veronica? Yeah, it's not set yet, so.
Okay.
And that meeting, as you said, will go bi-monthly now.
Okay. Any questions for Veronica or Annie? Okay, I see none. Thank you both. Next is Public Safety Committee, Travis Brooks, Vice Chair. Oh.
Well, we have.
This is interesting. Okay. We'll go to Budget, Capital, and Personnel, and then we'll come back to Public Safety. Budget, Capital, and Personnel, Deborah Dawson, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 3 resolutions, but before we get to that, I have a couple of remarks. I want to thank the committee members this year. I'm sorry that we're losing Greg Massey, because even though I disagree with him a lot of the time, I think he brings a valuable perspective. He brings up good issues that prompt excellent, robust discussions, and he has promised that he's going to show up as an ex officio member anyway. So we'll look forward to that, and I'm also looking forward to welcoming Amanda Champion to our committee. What we discussed at our last meeting, we got started on talking about our committee goals for 2023. Greg actually went through our committee goals for 2022, and I was surprised to learn that we actually achieved many of them, because it seemed like we spent most of the year in ad hoc reaction to the challenges we've faced, particularly on the personnel front. When I worked for the RTC years ago, we had a saying that when you're up to your butt in alligators, it's hard to remember you're there to drain the swamp. And that's kind of how I felt about our committee for most of the year. But thanks to our very good members, we got a lot done after all. We will continue our discussion of our 2023 goals at our next meeting with our new member. But it appears that at least one thing that we want to examine is what changes we might be able to make to our budget process that would make it more effective and friendlier and easier for staff as well. So if anybody has any excellent ideas on that topic, we'll be glad to hear them. And with that, we will move on to our resolutions, the first one of which is Resolution L, resolution to increase the senior elections clerk position to 40 hours, ID 11407, and I move that.
Thank you. Seconded by Lee Shurtleff.
And as I understand it, this position's hours were cut back some in reaction to the pandemic, but then only the Democratic senior clerk's position stayed cut, and the Republican position was moved back to full-time, and we just want to move our Democratic clerk back to full-time so she gets equal time.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, let's vote on that.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shurtleff,
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
12 ayes, motion passes.
Thank you. Then I have Resolution M, appropriation from contingent fund, additional funding for Community Recovery Grant Program Administration, ID 11345, and I move that.
If I could have a seconder, please. Seconded by Mike Lane.
And this is just providing additional funding for our contractor to provide monitoring and reporting services for the unexpectedly high number of grants that we made.
Any questions or comments? I see none. Let's do a roll call vote.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shurtleff,
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
12 ayes, 0 noes, motion passes.
Thank you. And then I'd like to move Resolution N, request for authorization to extend the additional 1% sales tax rate in Tompkins County, ID 11403.
Seconded by Mike Lane.
And this is a fairly routine resolution that we pass periodically so that we don't get cut back to 3% local sales tax share.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Mike Sigler?
It is fairly routine, and I comment on it every year for the simple fact that if I don't, I'm going to get calls about why I voted for this, and I feel I need to explain that now as opposed to later. We are a community with a lot of students. If this does not come out of the sales tax, it will go onto the property tax. This is literally one of the only ways we can actually capture some of the money from so many transient people in our economy. I love the transient people in our economy, don't get me wrong, but there really is no other way kind of to capture them as taxpayers except for this. And it is a relief to the property taxpayers in the county. So, I don't want people thinking, oh, we're just raising this tax to get more money. I really do look at this as an offset for the people that own property in the county. So,
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Mike Sigler,
yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Rich John's not here, Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
12 ayes, 0 noes, motion passes.
Thank you.
Mike?
I have a question on something we already voted on. Resolution M. Is this the last time this is going to happen, do you think?
I think so. They charge us on a per grant basis. So everything we did up till now was an estimate because we didn't know how many grants we were going to approve. So I suppose there are scenarios where there's a slight adjustment needed later on, but hopefully that won't happen.
I'm not saying we're not getting value. I'm not saying they're not worth it. It's peculiar, though, it seems to me, is you get a contracted price, but if you're saying that it was an estimate and that's how we're basing it, that makes more sense.
It was a cost per grant. So we just didn't know the total number of grants. There was no way to know it in advance unless we had decided that in advance, which we did not.
Thank you, Dan.
And I think even for the contract, even the per grant, this contract was still less than some of the bids that we had as well.
Far less, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Deborah? Deborah?
No.
Okay.
No, ma'am. Sorry.
Okay. Any individual member filed resolutions? Oh, public safety. Travis Brooks, Chair, Vice Chair.
Well, we haven't met since our last meeting. We'll meet this Thursday. Those of you who will be joining are welcome to join us. Here we go.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Travis? Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and approve the minutes of our previous meeting, January 3rd, 2023, moved by Randy Brown, seconded by Travis Brooks. And we'll do a roll call.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
12 ayes, 0 noes.
Thank
Motion
you.
passes.
Any unfinished business? Okay, can I have a mover to adjourn? Moved by Amanda, seconded by Greg Mezzi. And all those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you all. Have a good night.